the important thing is you have to have permission to stay in contact with people in a way that reliably drives action.
Hey, podcast listener, you're about to discover insider tips, tricks, and secrets to making more sales and converting more prospects into customers with email marketing. For more information about the Email Marketing Podcast or the Autoresponder Guy, go to dropdeadcopy.com/podcast. Hey everybody, it's John McIntyre here, the Autoresponder Guy. It's time for episode 31 of the Email Marketing Podcast, where we talk about the top tips, tricks, and secrets for making more sales and growing your revenue with email marketing. Today, I'll be talking to Tim Grahl. Now, Tim is a book marketing master. He's helped New York Times best-selling authors like Dan Pink and Barbara Corcoran to hit that bestsellers list and spread their message, engage their tribe, grow their business, and most importantly, sell more books. Now, he does a lot of this with email marketing. Surprise, surprise, right? So today, you're going to discover Tim's unique approach to email marketing and book marketing. We'll talk about the importance of relevant attention and more importantly, how to actually get it, because this is a really tricky issue sometimes, and how to have a raging, successful book launch. Now, to get the show notes for this episode of the Email Marketing Podcast, go to dropdeadcopy.com/31. Now, we have another 5-star review. This one is a bit of a long one. It's coming from Tanya McGill Freeman, who is actually a Drop Dead Copy subscriber and a McIntyre Method customer. So it's 5 stars, and the headline goes, "Actionable email marketing info that you cannot afford to miss out on." I'm so grateful that I found John's podcast. It's quickly become one of the most listened to podcasts in my list. John delivers extremely valuable email marketing advice in the authentic and entertaining way that only he can. He continually lands fascinating guests and always leaves you wanting more. I happen to be a member of his autoresponder course, the McIntyre Method, and I highly recommend it as well. The podcast and the course together are helping me to design a fabulous series for my social media business right now, which is at digitalsophisticate.com, which truly is an art form. Follow John, he'll show you the way. What a cool review. Thanks for the detailed review, Tanya. I'll add a link to your site in the show notes at dropdeadcopy.com. If you're a listener and you want to leave a review, you can leave your link like that, and I will read the review out and your link, and I'll put a link on my site. So hit me up with the review. I really appreciate the reviews. It really makes my day. It makes me smile. Now, I got one listener question that I want to hit today. The question is, what is my goal for 2014? Now, this is a very good question. It's very timely as well, because this week I basically finished up a project, and now I'm going to go back on the Drop Dead Copy as my main focus, which means there's a lot of things coming. So I want to grow the mailing list exponentially. I want to sell far more copies of the McIntyre Method. I'm adding upsells. There's going to be downsells. And I'm also looking into creating a done-for-you autoresponder service where basically I don't do any calls and I don't write any of the emails, but I set up a team that have been vetted and trained by me to write emails for other people. And it'll probably be something like a pay-per-email model with a minimum emails amount and some sort of setup fee for the research. So I'm just throwing around that idea right now. If you're interested, you can send me an email to ask about it if you'd like to hear more. But so 2014 looks like it's going to be a very fun, very exciting, and very big year for Drop Dead Copy and the Autoresponder Guy. Now, that's enough of the updates. Let's get into this interview and go talk to Tim Grahl about how to have a mega successful book launch with email marketing. It's John McIntyre here, the Autoresponder Guy. I'm here with Tim Grahl, a very interesting man who helps New York Times best-selling authors like Dan Pink, like Barbara Corcoran, to spread their message, engage their tribe, grow their business, and most importantly, sell more books. He has a book called Your First 1,000 Copies, which is a step-by-step guide to marketing your book. So this isn't info products. It's more like real books, physical books, and Kindle books. And today, we're going to talk about email marketing, obviously, because this is the Email Marketing Podcast. But we're going to talk specifically about how Tim uses email marketing with authors to help them sell more books. So this is going to help anyone who has a book or has a Kindle book or something like that and wants to find out how authors are doing it, how Tim's doing it with his clients. So that's what today is going to be about. So before we do that, let's meet Tim. Tim, how are you going today?
Doing good. Glad to be here.
Good to have you here, man. Before we get into the email stuff, let's start by telling us a bit about yourself.
Well, I run the company Outthink and started it about 7 years ago. And then about 3.5, 4 years ago, started working exclusively with authors and just helping them build their platform and I live in Lynchburg, Virginia with my family and just run this small company and enjoy my work.
Okay. Okay. And it sounds like you're really using a lot of email marketing, with your work with the authors.
Yeah, it really is the focus. A lot of times, authors come in, they're writers first and foremost. So, online marketing isn't really their forte. And they kind of get caught up in things like, spending a lot of time on social media, thinking that will sell books, or thinking if they just put up a blog and start putting stuff up that'll sell books. And, with everything, all the authors I've worked with and everything we do, we just see over and over that building that email list is the most important thing. So we just work with them to make sure that their strategy is focused on building that email list. And then we kind of go from there and figure out the best ways to do it.
Okay. Okay. That's cool. So the first lesson there, I think, is a lot of people get into this thing. They get online and they think they're going to make thousands of dollars a month or millions of whatever. And they think it's about getting on Facebook and Twitter and sharing stuff. And I think what it comes down to is building this list of leads. It sounds like that's what you're doing with the authors.
Yeah, and a lot of the three kind of things I talk about is permission, content, and outreach, and we can go deeper into those in a few minutes. But the important thing is you have to have permission to stay in contact with people in a way that reliably drives action.
Okay.
And a lot of times people try to take social media and put it in that bucket. And what I try to get people to realize is it's actually more of an outreach strategy. It's more about, you can use social media to meet new people. You're showing up, lots and lots of people are on Facebook. And so you're showing up where they already exist. But it's not a way that's going to communicate with them in a way that reliably drives action down the road. Right. So you actually use that outreach to drive them to your permission asset like an email list.
Right. I mean, I spoke to someone, did an interview last week with a guy who's been using a lot of social media as an email marketer, and a lot of email marketers hate on social media, but this guy made the point that it's really, really good, basically what you just said, for building relationships and connecting with people, but it's horrible to sell stuff when you try to get people to do something.
Yeah, and that's for a lot of reasons. I mean, every time you put something on Facebook, you're competing with, pictures of my kids and my nieces, I mean, it's just, that's hard to compete with. And so, I mean, but it is a place where you can connect with people. But, Gretchen Rubin, she's the best-selling author of Happiness Project and Happier at Home. And she uses Facebook where she kind of uses her Facebook page to put little tidbits up, stuff that doesn't make sense for her blog or her email list, and also just to stay in contact with people where they are, but she's always looking for ways to draw them in deeper. Like that's the first touch point, not the last one.
Okay, well, let's get right into it then. So you mentioned permission, content, and outreach. I don't know what the best way to do this is, but maybe we just start a permission and tell us a bit about how are you getting these authors to do their email stuff?
Yeah, so we focus on permission. So setting up your website, setting up everything so that you're driving people to an email list, and making sure that your website's optimized to get people on an email list. And then we look at content and how you can use content to spread your message, widely and freely so that you can reach a lot of people. And then we use outreach, and that's just basically moving people from not knowing you exist to knowing you exist. And we look at that as basically the path that people take is you use outreach to introduce yourself to new people, and that can be speaking at conferences, writing guest blog posts, being on podcasts, and then you use content to kind of drive that, right? So like right now we're talking about email marketing. I can write guest posts on different sites. I can speak at conferences and use that content to get people initially interested in what I'm doing. And then we use permission to actually get people on the list so that we can communicate with them long term. But you can't just throw up a website with an email list sign up and hope that people sign up. You actually have to start doing things that drive people to that funnel.
Okay. So there's kind of two portions here. You've got the kind of driving traffic to the site with the guest posts, podcasts, all sort of content and outreach on other people, content on other people's sites. And then you have the email itself, which is when you drop in. So let's talk really quickly just about how these authors are getting people to their site. It sounds like it's just content marketing in general with guest posts, podcasts, blogs, that kind of thing.
Yeah, but you can do some interesting stuff as an author. Like one is using, I always talk to authors about using their book as a way to get people back to their platform. So a lot of times a mistake that an author makes is they look, it's easy to look at a book as like a single thing that stands on its own. And so you like work really hard, put all this content in the book, and then put it up for sale, and you're constantly driving people to buy the book. But I also look at, how can we make the book as part of a bigger ecosystem to draw people back into your platform? And my book's a good example of this. So like inside the book, I put links to a bunch of resources. I have videos and other stuff on the book website. I can't put a video in a book. And so I put inside of the book links back to my website where you can get these resources. And on those pages are signups for the email list. And so the book is on Amazon. I have lots of people finding the book and buying the book that have never heard about me before. And then as they read it, they're actually driving them back to my email list. And so I'm using the book itself. I used the email list to sell the book, but I also used the book to drive the email list as well. So, that's one way. And the other thing that's really interesting about authors that I think more could take advantage of and take a nod from the info product world is working together. There's so many times where authors look at each other as competition instead of looking at each other as being able to help each other. And so what we need to do is like look at how authors can actually work together and actually drive each other's platforms. Because if I've read, a science fiction book in a certain, niche genre of science fiction, and there's another author that writes similar stuff, I'm more likely to read his book, not less likely. So if we work together, now if the authors work together, now they can trade readers and both of their platforms can grow.
I've been seeing this a lot lately in the music industry. I was watching like a Pitbull video on YouTube, and that guy's just doing like basically JVs, but he's just partnering up with some of the most famous musicians and celebrities in the world on tracks. And what that happens is he gets the opportunity to get exposed to a new audience, which is, the other person's. And then that person, like Jennifer Lopez, gets to get exposed to Pitbull's audience. So it's a win-win for both of them.
Right. Yeah, and that's and that works the same in the author world. And I think if both of them too are looking at how they can grow their lists, both of their lists will grow as a result. And that means that next time they come out with a book, they're going to have access to more people and have a bigger launch than the last time.
Okay, cool. So one thing I'm really interested in, because I sell an info product and I know a lot of other people who do the same thing. One thing I'd like to hear more about is how are you getting them onto the list in the first place? And then as an author, what sort of stuff are you sending them? I guess there's a pre-launch phase and a post-launch phase. As an author, what should you be sending in your emails?
Well, to get them on the list, I look at two main things is like I try to look at, how can we give a really compelling offer to be on the list? And then how do we make sure we're making that offer enough times that it gets people to actually take action. So we make sure the sign up box is contrasting colors. We make sure it's at the top of the site. We make sure it's on every page. We use pop-ups to make sure that, everybody that comes to the site sees the offer. And then as far as the offer goes, it's very particular to the author's audience. So, if you're writing a cookbook, you can give away recipes when people sign up. If you're a fiction writer, you can give away a short story or a portion of your upcoming book that hasn't been released yet. You just basically try to do something that you think will be the most compelling thing. For one of my authors, his first book is one of his most popular books still, and so we did this thing where everybody that signed up for the site, we would between a certain dates, we would pick 50 of them and give them an original first edition of that book. And so it really worked well to motivate people to get on the email list. And so that's what we look at is come up with something compelling that's particular to the author, and will also drive people in a way that they're interested in the content. One thing that I try to talk authors out of is doing things like Kindle giveaways or anything where people are signing up that are more to get a gadget or more to get something that really has nothing to do with the author. And so that's why we focus on things like content from books, content that's going to get them interested in the book, and not just, I'm signing up so hopefully I can win a free Kindle and I don't really care about the author. And so, yeah, and then as far as what to send after the fact, the best advice I ever heard was from a guy named Hugh McLeod, and he said, when it came to blogging and writing emails, to treat it like an adventure worth sharing. And so what I try to encourage my authors is to share the stuff that they're learning as a writer, to share the stuff they're working on, to look for ways to add to people's life. And again, this is very different from author to author, but at the same time, if you're trying to build a community around you as an author and you're writing, share stuff as you're going. And so for me, a lot of people join my list because they're interested in selling more books. And so over the course of launching my own book, I shared with them exact figures of how many books I sold. I shared how, my strategy behind the entire book launch. I shared my journal I kept while promoting the book. The one I'm working on now is like why I picked self-publishing over traditional publishing, and looking, just sharing as I learn things. I share those with my list. And again, that can be anything. I see fiction writers that share, how they build worlds and how they do character development, and they also share like other books they're reading that they enjoy. So I just encourage people, like if they're struggling to find what to write about, just to share things that they're interested in, and share things that, if they're a writer in a certain genre, people reading that genre are going to just be interested in what they're doing. And so I just focus on trying to be very natural about it. I'm not, trying to, I don't have an agenda behind every email that I send. I don't have something I'm trying to accomplish, except for I'm trying to be relentlessly helpful and entertaining to the people on my list so that they'll continue to pay attention. And so when I have something to sell them, they'll be interested enough to buy.
Okay. So there's two, I think, really powerful things going on there. You've got, well, number one, and I try and tell this to people all the time, is that the attention that they get with their marketing needs to be relevant. So, I mean, like you said with the Kindle giveaways, if you're getting someone's attention and they're signing up for a Kindle giveaway, they're not necessarily interested in the book or the product or whatever is going to be sold down the line. And that's, a lot of people miss that. They think they can throw up an ebook and say it's worth $100, or they can put any sort of random offer there just to get people on their list. They try and bribe people onto it. But they forget, and I think this is really simple, but just most people miss it, that they forget that they're getting a certain type of attention, and they need the same attention that's going to buy their product down the line, not something else. And the other thing was just about being entertaining. And this is another friend of mine talks about this, Ben Settle, how that, email should really, it's like kind of like talk show radio. You're just sitting down and you're talking about whatever's on your mind. And a lot of people find that really, really hard when they sit down to write. It's kind of like, what do I write about? Do I write tips or how-tos or stuff like that? But yeah, a lot of people, like you just said, that they basically need to be entertained so that when the email comes along that sells them something, yeah, you're absolutely right, that the person buys it.
Well, the thing that I try to do is I try to imagine what I would talk to people if I met them at a party somewhere or at a conference somewhere, and they started asking me, the reason why I'm writing this next email about self-publishing is because I've had several people ask me, well, why did you self-publish instead of traditionally publish? And and I've had people ask me that, when we're talking and over email, and it's obvious it's something people are interested in because I'm getting asked about it. And when I write, I just try to think, well, what would I tell them? How would I talk when I talk to them? And really, I think people make two pretty common mistakes. One is they do that thing where they're like, I just want to get people on my list. I'll do anything to get people on my list. And they forget that like every time your email list ticks up one more person, that's an actual person with hopes, dreams, and fears, and that your job is to help them get what they want out of life. And so it's not just about like building the numbers. It's about like, these are people that are signing up because they're hoping to get something, whether it's entertainment or whether it's losing weight or whether it's, going further in my job or, making money online, whatever it is, they have hopes and dreams, and your job is to help them get that. And so whatever you're giving away, whatever you're sending them, that's what you're hoping to do. So it's not just about, if you get so focused on, I got to reach this number of people so I can sell this many products, you're never going to get there. And then the other side is, we also tend to take it too seriously. We think everything has to be perfect, or we have to have the exact right thing to say. And again, if you just focus on how can I be the most helpful, how can I send people stuff that I think is interesting, that I find interesting, I think you're going to find a good balance.
That's really cool. And I think a lot of authors would, if they're writers, they're probably generally good storytellers. That I don't know if you do this, but I do a lot of it, and it works really well. That's just telling stories. So the other day I was at this conference, and I was talking to James, and James asked me X, and then we talked about this, and people really get involved in stories, which would be a really easy way, I think, for authors to kind of use what they already know to just tell a story.
Yeah, and again, authors in general lead pretty interesting lives. Like, even though, like, if you feel like you're just sitting, down in your basement writing words, that doesn't seem too interesting. But at the same time, like, you're researching things, you're probably talking to other writers, you're reading about writing, you're probably reading about, if you're writing a crime drama, you're probably learning about, police procedure in certain areas of the country. If you end up doing a ride along with a cop, like, that kind of stuff is interesting. Tell those stories. And, I feel like, most of us miss out because we're not looking at it this way. I was talking to one of my clients the other day, and he's like, I don't really, what am I going to write about? I don't really have much going on. And I'm like, dude, you spend your life researching. Like, you spend your life reading interesting research papers and stuff that scientists have discovered and researchers have discovered. I'm like, share that stuff. Say, I read this interesting paper last week that explained this, this, and this. Like, that's interesting stuff. That's why people buy this particular author's books anyway. And he's like, I just look at that as like, I'm just, reading stuff for my next book, or reading stuff I'm interested in. I'm like, exactly, just share that. Most of us don't have the time, access, or know-how to even come across those studies, and even if we read them, we probably wouldn't even understand them because they're so dense. And so looking at everything that you do through a lens of like, is this something I could share? Is this something my people would be interested in? And if you really start looking at your life through that lens, you're going to start seeing stuff pop up all over the place.
Yeah, it's pretty much that. I had a friend, another guy, John McCulloch, we did an interview kind of a couple of weeks ago, and he says something like, nothing bad ever happens to an email marketer, which is really just talking about how anything that happens, anything in the day-to-day, is a story, and you can sit down and tell it. And I reckon a lot of people would be interested in what writers do. I mean, not just the research, but like, are they sitting in an office at home, or are they sitting in Starbucks with, everyone around them drinking coffee? Like, where do they like to write? How do they spend their days? Like, what do they care about aside from just sitting down and writing? It's very interesting. You can start to create some really interesting topics when you go deep.
Yeah, and what I find, especially with authors, is you always want to be building a community around you as an author. So you don't want something around a particular book that you've written. You don't want to build a platform around like just one thing that you write about. You want people to be fans of you first. And that gives you all kinds of options. One of my clients, Dan Pink, he's written books on creativity. He's written books on motivation. He's written books on sales, like very wide-ranging topics, but because people are fans of him and his worldview, they buy each one. And so he's done a good job of making sure people are connected to him as an author, and him in the way he thinks and the way his worldview, more than they're connected to any one topic. And that also allows him, like, when he sends out an email and it has his 5 favorite novels of 2012 in it, people love that because they think, well, I like everything else he does. I'll probably like the novels he writes, even though he's a nonfiction writer, or the novels he reads. And so really looking at it as, you're building a community around you. People are interested in what you have to say. So just share things that you find interesting and things that you come across, throughout your daily life.
Okay, that's cool. So we're almost at time. One thing I've been meaning to ask is book launch strategies. Like when you have an author and they've built a list, they have people on there, they've been sending out these emails that are entertaining, and then it comes time to say, hey, my book's ready to buy. Do you have a strategy that you use for like a launch sequence or sales emails, or how salesy do you get?
Yeah, so the thing I remind my authors, my clients, when we do this is to remember that the only reason they're building a list is so that they can eventually sell books, right? So sometimes we kind of, we build this list over, years, and then when it comes time to release a book, we're like, oh, well, I don't want to bug those people. And it's like, well, if you weren't selling books, you wouldn't be building a list. The clerk at your local home improvement store is not building an email list, because he has nothing to sell. And so focus on that. And then the three things I look at is, number one, I look at how many books can I sell to my fans. So my email list, social media, all those things, try to sell as many copies as possible to them. Then I look at how I can make it easy for my fans to share the book. So how can I give them copy that they can put to their email list, or they can send to their friends, they can put on social media. And then the third thing is, how can I leverage influencers that I'm connected to help promote the book? So other authors, other bloggers, other podcasters, how can we all work together to help promote this book? And then email list in particular, I basically send as many emails as I am comfortable with promoting the book. So for a lot of my authors, it's like 4 or 5. For myself, I went as high as 9 different emails. Wow. And my open rate and click-through rate stayed consistent through the entire thing. And that's because each email I sent out, I put great content in. I focused on really giving away content that I thought was going to be really helpful and really support the book. So I gave away different excerpts of the book, but I also did a webinar sharing, case studies that had happened since I finished the book. I also shared like different videos. Again, I can't put a video in the book, so I shared videos that I had done around the book. I did all kinds of different content. So it wasn't just 9 emails of like, hey, buy my book. Hey, buy my book. Hey, buy my book. It was like, hey, here's something else I talked about in the book, or here's another way that you can think about the content in this book. And so with a list, I spend more time building my clients' list than my own. So with a list of just 1,800 people, I was able to sell over 1,000 copies of my book in just 2 weeks. Wow. And then it's continued to sell. And so I just worked really hard to give away great content that was shareable and that supported the book. And of course, in each one, I would say, hey, this book is now available and you can buy it now. And so, I didn't shy away from telling people to buy the book, but I made sure that every time I asked them to buy the book, I gave them some content that was helpful in and of itself, standalone.
Okay, that's really cool. That's some great results you got there too.
Yeah, I was really happy with how it went. And then, of course, with Amazon, you end up getting in kind of their system where you become a recommended book. And my sales have stayed steady. I've continued to sell books week after week because I sold so many up front. Amazon continues to promote the book.
Nice. Fantastic. Okay. Well, we're right on time now. But before we go, give yourself a plug. Tell me where they can find you. I know you do coaching and that kind of thing. So, tell me where they can find you, and then we'll say goodbye.
Yeah, so you can find my book at Amazon, your first 1,000 copies. And then I have a free course on how you can build your platform, and that's available at my website, outthinkgroup.com. And you just sign up for the email list, and I'll send you a series of emails over a month. So those are the 2 best things to do.
Okay, man. Well, thanks again for coming on. Hey everybody, thanks for listening. If you want to discover more insider tips, tricks, and secrets about driving sales with email marketing, sign up for daily email tips from the autoresponder guy. Go to dropdeadcopy.com/podcast. Sign up, confirm your email address, and I'll send you daily emails on how to improve your email marketing and make more sales via email. You'll find out why open rates don't matter, and the 7-letter word that underlies all effective marketing, and much more.
The editing and production of this podcast were provided by Authority Engine. Learn more at authorityengine.com.